I'm Dru Stevenson, and this is a video for my nonprofit incorporations class. Here I'm going to be covering the introductory concept of a nonprofit as a corporation. And so, first of all, why do nonprofits incorporate? And secondly, why nonprofits are sort of a special or unique type of corporation that's a little different from all other corporations. This is a foundational concept that my students really need to understand and practitioners need to understand if a client comes to them and wants help with creating or setting up a nonprofit and applying for tax-exempt status for it. So let's dive in. Most corporations have owners, like shareholders, or it could be a doing business as type entity, something where there could be one person who owns a business. It could be a handful of people, or it could be a publicly traded company where there are literally thousands and thousands of shares of stock that are out there and potential owners. Nonprofits don't have anyone who owns the entity. It is not anyone's property for any individual. In fact, when I began my law practice after law school, I was practicing in Connecticut, and there the legal term was an archaic term that we used, which was non-stock corporations, which I think is actually nicely descriptive, because nonprofits can have net revenue. So you could have more money come in from contributions or donations, or if you're a school, you could charge tuition and fees that exceeds your overhead expenses. So when we say nonprofit, we don't mean that the entity can't have net revenue. What we mean is that there is no individual who's entitled to that as the owner of the corporation, as a shareholder. So no one gets the profits or net revenue. No one is entitled to derivatives. And very importantly, when the nonprofit dissolves, there's no one who gets to keep whatever the remaining assets are, the money that's still in the bank account, or just keep the property that the nonprofit owned, and so forth. So this is very important to understand that the nonprofit doesn't really have owners, and this concept has to be spelled out in its articles or certificate of incorporation, that there has to be a provision that says upon dissolution of this organization, or basically when it terminates, that remaining assets have to be distributed to another nonprofit, and that there's no individual who is entitled to the assets or net revenues or derivatives or anything like that from the organization. For-profit companies, of course, have shareholders and owners. All right, so let's move on. Now we're going to talk about the liability, or some of the legal reasons to incorporate, besides covering the concept that there's no owner of a nonprofit corporation. And this is going to be more familiar, I think, as a concept to law students. Basically, if we don't form a corporation, like a legal entity that's distinct from the individuals, then every person who is involved in a charitable activity or undertaking or endeavor could be jointly and severally liable when something goes wrong. So we're talking about lawsuits for personal injury, that's torts, lawsuits over breaches of contract, lawsuits over property claims, who really owns this building, or there's equipment that someone took out a secured loan for, and so forth. So any litigation that arises, the people could be jointly and severally liable, and even in theory, volunteers. Now, there's some special provisions under Texas law if you have adequate insurance and you follow some other procedural safeguards. But keep in mind that there's a risk of liability for not only the managers, but employees and staff and volunteers and truck drivers and so forth. And so if we create an entity, then when there's a lawsuit, the lawsuit would be against the entity as a defendant. If the entity loses, it could lose those assets, but the individuals involved would not be personally liable for the damages. The other thing is that money that's collected could be counted as an individual's personal income or assets for tax purposes. So I'm going to start with a very familiar everyday scenario where you work at an office, a law firm, or someplace, and it's somebody's birthday, or there's a going away party for someone, or someone had a baby, and someone is going around having everyone chip in to get them a gift. That's probably fine. It's de minimis and so forth. But now let's take that up a level and escalate it. You live kind of near where there's been a natural disaster. Like a lot of people have lost their homes in floods or wildfires or something like that. And you are moved by this. You want to help people. And so you start going around to local businesses asking for donations, and some donate money and others donate, let's say, a truckload of bottled water or blankets or children's clothing, things like that to help the victims of the natural disaster. Well, at some point, even though you intend to turn around and give it away, if there's no entity that this is being donated to you, then it's income for you. Or at least a gift to you individually that becomes your property, and this is a taxable transaction in that case. So if you want to have a lot of people contribute to something, it's much better to have a legal entity that's legally separate from you personally, and that can be a nonprofit that doesn't have to pay taxes on what's given to it or its revenues and so forth. Otherwise, you will be the one in a position to try to argue that the thousands and thousands of dollars and tens of thousands worth of goods and assets that were donated to you weren't really income or revenue or profit for you individually. There's also a secondary or almost tertiary reason to incorporate when you're a nonprofit, to form a legal entity instead of just being a group of friends who like to get together and help people or do nice things and for the poor, or engage in humanitarian work or religious activities or things like that. And this is about grants. So the big money, the big donations in the area of philanthropy and charities and so forth, usually either are government grants or come from private foundations. And the government grants could be federal, they could be state, they could be local. You could have a state government that will give someone a grant to set up a tutoring program or a mentoring program or something like that. But all of these grant-making foundations and grant-making government agencies, usually they have a rule that they will not disperse grants to an individual. They want to give it to an organization, and specifically an organization that has a tax-exempt status from the IRS, has been determined to be a 501(c)(3) tax-exempt entity. And so that has become an eligibility requirement for most grants. When we incorporate a new nonprofit corporation, there's two prongs to this. One is the creation of the legal entity. That's the corporate formation, drafting articles of incorporation and bylaws. That's handled on the state level. We file that with the state secretary of state's office in every state. There's certain verbiage that you would need to include in your articles of incorporation or certificate of incorporation that designate it as nonprofit or a not-for-profit corporation. But in order to ensure that you have corporate tax exemption, that is handled primarily at the federal level. And so you're going to have to file some paperwork with the federal IRS to obtain a determination that you meet the eligibility requirements to be tax exempt. If you're not, then you will be considered a for-profit corporation. And that could mean that donations or contributions to you will count as taxable corporate income and will be taxed at corporate rates. If you are a school, they will deem you to be a for-profit school. So tuition that's paid will count as sales or revenue of services. Any type of income or assets or revenue that you have would be taxable at usual corporate rates. So that tax exemption means that the money that comes in would not be subject to federal corporate taxes. Now, there's a few caveats to this. So state Sales tax is usually handled on the state level. Local property taxes on real estate are a municipal matter, but you handle those after your corporation has been created on the state level, and which you have to do first, and then you obtain tax exemption from the IRS. Now, if there are a number of different types of 501c tax exempt entities, generally speaking, they are all exempt from paying corporate income tax on the revenue that comes in, whether it's donations or membership fees and dues or tuition, things like that. But a 501c3 has another layer of tax privilege, which means that people who just give money to the 501c3 charity can take a deduction for that on their personal income taxes. The other types of 501Cs generally, like 501c4s, C6s, the money that's given to them, usually in membership fees and dues, is not tax deductible as a charitable donation. So that's the real value of being a 501c3 as opposed to one of the other types of 501c corporations. I'm going to have a separate video where I talk about the main or most important types of 501c corporations besides 501c3s. And that concludes my introductory video about what we mean by a nonprofit corporation and what we mean by a nonprofit corporation, the nonprofit part and the corporation part, and what happens when you have something that's both of those things. Thanks for watching.